The story of Dr. Dolittle. It was a beautiful Sunday morning, and Dr. John Dolittle was sitting on the porch reading a book. He was in the company of his favorite pets, Dab Dab the duck, Jip the dog, Polynesia the parrot, Tutu the owl, and the monkey Chi Chi. All of them were playing on the grass except Chi Chi, who was solving a crossword puzzle. Suddenly, Dab Dab approached the doctor and quacked.
Dr. Dolittle, why don't you tell us a story? It's been a while since we heard one.
Dr. Dolittle put down his book and looked up. All the animals stopped playing and gazed up at him keenly. Even Chi Chi put his crossword aside and said,
Yes, tell us a story.
The doctor began.
I will tell you about an experience from my early days.
Dr. Dolittle continued.
I had just finished medical school. I was very young at that time, full of hope and just starting out in the field of medicine. I fancied myself to be a very good doctor. However, the rest of the world did not think so. And that's why I did not get a single patient for many months after I received my degree.
At this point, Tutu took a short flight and landed on the armrest of Dr. Dolittle's rocking chair.
Well, about this time, I met another young doctor, Dr. Cornelius Q. Phipps. He too had the same problem as me. Not getting people for months, he suggested that we start a sanatorium.
Sanatorium? Squawked Polynesia. What does it mean?
A sanatorium is like a hospital as well as a hotel, where not so healthy people stay. It was a good idea, and I agreed to it happily. I was delighted to finally be able to contribute to the betterment of people.
Did you?
Asked Jip, now up on all four out of curiosity.
Yes, of course.
Answered Dolittle.
Soon enough, we started putting things in place. Dr. Phipps was in charge of arranging these things. He had a better sense of how to run a business, you see. We hired a team of nurses, took a beautiful place in the countryside, and furnished it with wheelchairs, hot water bottles, and the things that not so healthy people need.
He continued.
Hundreds of patients came to us, and our sanatorium was full.
Said Dr. Dolittle.
We made wads of money because our guests paid us well. Dr. Phipps was very happy. His business was running well, just as he had imagined it.
That's great.
Said Chi Chi.
But I was unhappy.
Dr. Dolittle carried on.
I had noticed a peculiar thing. None of the unwell ever seemed to get well and go away. When I spoke to Dr. Phipps about this, he looked at me in great surprise.
My dear Doolittle,
He said,
go away? Of course not. We don't want them to go away. We want them to stay here, so they'll keep paying us.
On this point, we quarreled.
Dr. Dolittle looked around and saw all the animals listening to him in attention. Then he said,
I got very annoyed. I told him that I would not be his partner any longer, that I would pack up and leave. As I left the room in rage, I passed one of the sick people in his wheelchair. It was Sir Timothy Quisby, a very important guest, because his bills were huge. He asked me to check his fever, and I knew he did not have one. In fact, I had never been able to find anything wrong with Sir Timothy. I felt that being sick was a hobby for him. So instead of checking his temperature, I angrily told him to fly to the moon. Sir Timothy was furious. He called for Dr. Phipps and demanded that I apologize. I stated that I wouldn't. Sir Timothy threatened to go on strike. Dr. Phipps got quite worried and asked me to say sorry. But I refused. Then, an unusual thing happened. Sir Timothy, who always seemed too weak to walk, sprang out of his wheelchair. In a fit of anger, he ran around the sanatorium and urged other guests to go on a strike for their rights. And they did. That night, they refused to eat dinner or even take their medicine. They did not listen to the hospital staff and even had a pillow fight with their hot water bottles. Imagine! Dr. Phipps begged them to behave, but it was all in vain. The next morning, they all packed their suitcases and left. And that was the end of our sanatorium.
Oh my!
said Dab Dab.
But the strangest thing of all was,
Said Dr. Dolittle.
I found out that every single one of them had got well. Getting out of their wheelchairs and going on strike had done them so much good. As a sanatorium owner, I suppose I was not a success. But as a doctor, I certainly cured every one of the patients by making the sanatorium go out of business than Dr. Phipps ever did